It's an application for a binding report in the borough of Manhattan. It's 65 Jumel Terrace, located with it's the Morris Jumel Mansion, individual and interior landmark, located within the Jumel Terrace Historic District, docket number 166237. This is a Georgian-style mansion built in 1765 and remodeled in 1810 in the Napoleonic Empire style with federal-style details. The application is to install a condenser unit and enclosure within Roger Morris Park and floor vents in the Octagon Room.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Carly Bond of the Preservation Staff. This is an application for work at the Morris Jumel Mansion, which is an individual and interior landmark located in Upper Manhattan. The landmark site includes all of Roger Morris Park, which is bound by West 162nd Street and West 160th Street between Jumel Terrace and Edgecombe Avenue, which is also part of the Jumel Terrace Historic District. This is an application to air condition the Octagon Room, which is located on the first floor of this wing, which is part of interior designation. Proposed work includes the installation of wood floor vents within the Octagon Room and the installation of one condensing unit for wood enclosure situated to the east of the mansion, approximately here. And Sybil Young from the Department of Parks and Recreation is here to walk you through the proposal.
We'll reopen the hearing.
Good
afternoon. My name is Sybil Young. I'm with the Parks Department's Capital Design Division. And as Carly mentioned, I'm here to present our proposal for installing an air conditioning system that will service the Octagon Room at Morris Jumel Mansion. Just to touch on the history of the house, it was built in 1765 as a summer home for Roger Morris and his wife, Mary Phillips. It is the oldest house in Manhattan, and also it is a house that Washington actually did sleep in, as it served as his headquarters in 1776 during the Battle of Harlem Heights. And the octagonal edition is believed to be one of the first of its kind in the country. This is the Octagon Room in 1886. Over the course of the 20th century, it underwent a number of restorations, renovations prior to the renovation, and this is the room today. This is the basement below the room where the majority of our work will take place. So currently there's no cooling system in place for the Octagon Room, and it is the most heavily used room in the house. It's where the museum brings school groups. It's where they have public programs, concerts, community meetings, and with the cooling system in place, they hope to use it even more during the warmer months. So the scope of work required for this AC system is the ductwork to be installed below the room in the basement, a condenser unit to be placed to the east of the house in the landscape, one basement window, there will be a louver installed, and 6 floor vents will be installed within the room itself. First I'm going to talk about the location of the condenser in the landscape. We worked with our Parks Department landscape architects to find what we think is the most appropriate spot for this unit. And we settled upon this circled area in green here. There we go. For a number of reasons. First of which is the entrance to the house is up here at Jumel Terrace, and so you'd enter here and then walk along the path to enter the house there, and it wouldn't be visible from the entrance and as you approach the house. Also, there is this rock outcropping here, which hides it a little from the rear, and the grade drops there a bit, so the unit's sunk in a bit in the landscape. And then just the constraints we were under for the number of feet that the unit could be from the house, this fit within the range. This is a close-up plan of the unit in the landscape. We're also proposing to plant some evergreen shrubs in the area of the unit. And at the bottom here is an elevation showing the unit in relation to the house. You can see where the grade drops, and this is the path around the house. The unit itself up here, the unit itself is about 3 feet by 3 feet by 3.5 feet in height. which necessitates a unit that, or sorry, an enclosure that is about 5.5 feet by 5.5 feet by almost 4 feet in height. And it would be placed on a 6-inch concrete slab. The enclosure, for the enclosure, we're proposing pressure-treated wood with an open lattice design, and I'll talk a little bit more about the enclosure in a later slide. But and then the top of it is 12-gauge stainless steel. And here are some views of the approximate location in the landscape. As I mentioned, we have to install a louver for ventilation, and that will be on the east side of the house. The west side of the house. The east side has an existing louver for the furnace, so it's that window there. This is a basement mechanical plan showing the ductwork. This is the first floor plan with the 6 floor vents we're proposing to install. The floor vents will be of wood to match the existing floor in species and finish, and they'll be flush mounted. We also need to put 1 vent pipe in, and that will be on the east side of the house. So as far as the equipment and materials, up here, this is the actual unit we're proposing. And as I mentioned, we are talking about enclosing it in wood with an open lattice that simulates the lattice work of the porch. We're not going to be painting it, we're just going to leave it to weather so it doesn't jump out at you in the landscape. And for the floor vents, they will be of wood and again match the existing floor in species and finish, and flush mounted. Just a few other things. We were fortunate in that the Historic House Trust was able to bring on a consultant who specializes in the installation of climate control in museum spaces. So they were able to review our contract documents and provide us with some feedback that we could bring into our design. And we think that the installation of this unit is pretty reversible. As technology advances, in 50 years we want to do something else, we can easily remove this unit.
You mean like geothermal? Believe it or not, it exists today.
Can't do geothermal there, the stone is about.
Right.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes, Michael.
Isn't it true, Ms. Young, that the east side of this building has always been seen as the secondary facade, the backyard, as it were, because there's flush siding that faced the King's Highway, and there are shingles on this side. So this is actually the appropriate location for this.
Right.
Thank you. Now, that was a lead, a softball. How many of the floor vents will there be, and what size are they?
There's 6 floor vents, and they, sorry, it's a little hard to see here. They're about 18 by 8, I think it is, to 20 by 8 is the size.
So the intent would be, I mean, those are original floorboards in there. The intent would be to take.
Actually, we don't believe they are original floorboards.
They're pretty old. So you'll save the pieces that you're taking out. So.
Yeah, everything will be saved, and requirements to finish around to repair everything is.
All right. Yes, Michael.
Have they ever done any archaeology on the site where, is there any, the only concern I would have about the siting is would there ever be a plan to restore the landscape into some earlier version for which this might be the wrong place for it?
Well, we did talk with staff about archaeology. As far as this project's concerned, we are going to include an unanticipated discoveries plan, just with the piping. We don't anticipate that area of the park. In the 1930s, the grade was raised there. So what we'll be dealing with will be mostly newer fill. And we do include an allowance for an archaeologist should anything come
All right, any other questions? Okay, we'll take testimony. Barbara Zay.
Barbara Zay of the Historic Districts Council. HDC questions the number of proposed floor vents to be installed in the Octagon Room and wonders why 6 are necessary. Our committee would also suggest further investigation into styles and types of available floor vents, as the wide border on the proposed vents makes them appear quite clunky. A vent with a more elegant grate design would have a more honest presence in the room. Thank you.
Thank you. Christabel Gupp.
Christabel Goff for the Society for the Architecture of the City. Last time I visited Morris Jumel Mansion, it was in winter, and the volunteers were wearing hats, gloves, scarves, and overcoats indoors and shivering. Hopefully a more reliable furnace is being installed as well as air conditioning. The condenser unit can probably be adequately masked with foliage, but the floor vents in the Octagon Room seem rather intrusive. It is unclear whether so many need to be installed in these very visible locations. The design choice of the vent cover is unusual for an historic house, probably because in many cases central heat will have been installed long ago, that a decorative grille was the norm instead of the louvers, which are suggestive of mid-century modern efficiency. The Octagon is such a perfect and rare space that it is worthwhile to scrutinize both the technical specifications and the design choices very carefully. I'm not sure how what heating there is installed, actually, but I'm wondering whether the two systems could not be combined instead of cutting out the floor, which, if not original, is certainly, as Commissioner Devonshire says, a lovely old floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more speakers? Before we get to comments or questions, Community Board 12 supports the project proposed by the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation to install air conditioners and dehumidifying system in the basement of Morris Jumel Mansion on the grounds of Roger Morris Park to serve the mansion's Octagon Room. All right, you have a question?
Yes, are there radiators there that don't work?
Would you like to answer that? Yes.
Because you're providing heating and cooling, right?
I'm sorry, there are radiators that serve this room. The purpose of this is for air conditioning. What is going in could possibly use for heat should there go out or something. It could double as that, but the real purpose is for air conditioning.
Can you just respond to the number of vents, because that's come up a couple of times?
Yeah, that is something we talked about with our mechanical engineers. It's what they felt was necessary for the system to keep the room cool.
Okay. Yes.
Just another question. And there's no way to use the locations where those radiators are now and put something there that does both heating and cooling and use under the space now? I think, I'm not sure, but it just...
Right, sure. I'm not really sure. I think we did look at a lot of options with our mechanical engineers, and they felt that was not possible. I mean, I remember it coming up, but, you know, I don't know the technicality of why we can do that.
Amy Arnowski also came from the front just to address that. So the radiators are a steam system, so to make the two systems work together with the same venting system, we have to change the boiler to like a forced hot air system. And right now we're leaving the boiler in the current state it is. It's working. So that's why they're two separate systems this time. And then just to point out to the point about some discussion about the floor vents, if you want to go back to one of the historical images of the Octagon Room, you can see that previously it had very elaborate floor design. Go back if you just want to point out. So we don't have that today, so it has changed over time, even with the floor level.
That's paint, not a rug.
It is.
I think it's
With mosaics or something?
It's a painted canvas.
canvas.
Yeah.
So it's not the wood? so just one more comment then about, so, but if there was a possibility of somehow putting something in those existing cabinets, you wouldn't have to cut into the floor, which is, I mean, maybe it's not original, but it's still historic. I'm just asking in terms of making sure that you really did look at it. So you're saying cost-wise?
Well, the boiler's functioning, I mean, the
boiler's
radiator
there.
comes out, so it's you know, a pipe coming through, a smaller opening to a radiator system that is hidden behind the cabinets under, so it's a, to change that system so that way it would also work as HVAC, or to work as air conditioning in addition to heat, you'd still need to let the exhaust, the flow of both cool and hot air come in, so it's a different way you would get the heat, which requires an opening, different from what's there today. And then,
Sorry, hi, Jonathan Mello from the Historic House Trust. Just to give a little more background on how we kind of arrived at this design. When we first met out there with parks engineers, we talked about different ways to get the cooler air in. And there was some discussion of having, coming down from the ceiling or out of the walls. And our thought was to do as little invasive impact on this room as possible. And so since we can run everything in the basement, we have a full height basement underneath this room. Floor vents in general from our houses that we've worked on is the preferred route to go about, because basically you are taking these little sections off the floors, but as opposed to if we had to run it through the walls, the way it was explained to us, we'd be taking out a lot of the correct historic fabric, plaster, woodwork, so it really makes a lot of sense to us to do it this way. And just as Amy said, in terms of the heating system, it is a separate system, so kind of combining the two would be problematic. The other thing I just wanted to stress to you guys, climate control, I know in terms of historic preservation, is always an issue that we debate in our office back and forth, whether you should do it, whether you should not do it. But one of the things we're trying to do with all of our historic houses is to make them more functional for the community. And so when Sybil and I were at the community board, one of the things we stressed to them was, we hope that the local community board will now have their meetings at the Morris Jumel Mansion. We're going to have the neighborhood association meet here. We're going to have the Girl Scouts meet here. That's part of our goal, is to actually make the house more part of the community. And that's really the driving force behind this project.
Okay, yes,
Would
Michael?
would it be technically possible to to use the existing boiler, to put a hot water or steam coil into the duct, and thereby use the existing heating system, but eliminate the radiators?
We can explore that. I don't know the answer to that, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, as you can see right now, in the two corners there, you have these rather unattractive.
Right. I see it.
Yeah.
That's why I asked the
No,
question.
right. No.
To get rid of those.
No.
But you're suggesting going to electric heat?
No. You put a hot water coil or a steam coil into the duct at in the basement.
We had discussed that. Our office also would like to see those removed. I'm not sure we quite have the budget right now to do it, but it's definitely something that the board, I know, Morris Jumel also would prefer to see them out of the room.
It's just that it's the oldest house in Manhattan, and so we.
Right. I mean,
like
when we first started talking about this project, one of the interesting things, you saw one photograph, but we could provide you guys, we have probably 20 different historic photographs of this room over the last 100 years. And it's like somebody just couldn't stop redesigning this room. The way it looks changed seemingly every 10 or 15 years. The mantle has been changed, I don't know, a dozen times.
Yes, Michael.
If I may, our office restored this building in 1990. One of the unique building techniques on this was, in fact, that it's a heavy timber frame structure, but they took the brick nogging that goes inside the frame, and it actually extends into the building one wide. So the entire frame could rot out, the building would still stand, but as a result, all of that plaster is faced right up against brick masonry. And so, in defense of your methodology of not going into the walls, it would not only destroy a significant amount of historic fabric, it would be nearly impossible to do it financially for you folks. And if I may, one other point. George Washington did sleep in this house, in fact, but he was courting Mary Phillips at the same time that Roger Morris was. Roger Morris won out, but then escaped to England during the Revolutionary War, and then George Washington moved in, as it were.
Thank you for that tidbit. All right, with that, any other questions? Okay, we can close the hearing. Comments? Is there any? I think we've heard comments right now, but yes.
I
Yes,
think that the issues brought up in the testimony about the grills is, I think it's interesting, but I think that if one is choosing to restore the room as it appears to be to a pre-Victorian period, I don't think there were a whole lot of those kind of cast grills that you would find. I think that the wood grills are probably the most unobtrusive. However, I think if it were possible to either consolidate them into the 4 positions under the windows and keep it away from the wall section, or maybe extend it to the octagonal windows where the radiators could be removed and should be removed, that would be better. Because if you look at in the one photograph that they provided, and certainly for other old houses that I've seen, you tend to get furniture under the windows fairly frequently, or in front of the windows, and it would be less obtrusive, I think, than having the grill in front of the wall.
All right, other comments? Yes.
I actually would agree with that, and a furnishing plan from the 18th century, the furniture would be placed around the perimeter of the room rather than in the middle of it and conceal those things.
So maybe we can ask the Parks Department to work with staff on that. Okay, any other comments or questions? All right, so I think I already closed the hearing, but if I didn't, I'm closing it now. Kim, do you want to read the resolution?
Okay. In the matter of 65 Jumel Terrace, a Georgian-style mansion built in 1765 and remodeled in 1810. The application is and I've lost it. Application is to install air conditioning ductwork in the cellar and the registers, grills on the first floor. Staff comments. Staff notes that
No, we note.
I comment. Sorry.
I note.
I note that the octagonal room, drawing room, was reinterpreted to its pre-revolutionary appearance prior to designation. I recommend approval, finding that visitors to the Morris Jumel Mansion and Roger Morris Park primarily enter through the Jumel Terrace entrance to the west of the mansion, and the proposed condensing unit is sited to the east of the mansion, outside of the typical pedestrian circulation flow in the park. That the condensing unit will be situated in this depressed location at a significant distance from the mansion to minimize its visual impact. That the condensing unit will be partially shielded by existing rock outcroppings and new plantings, and will be enclosed with a low wood lattice fence to match existing lattice work on the porch on the east elevation, giving the installation a discrete presence in the landscape. That the wood flooring in the octagonal room is non-historic. Therefore, the installation of the proposed floor vents will not result in the removal of historic fabric. That the proposed wood floor vents will be set flush with the floorboards and stained to match, and will provide air conditioning for the room in the least obtrusive manner possible. That the proposed work is supportive of the ongoing use and educational mission of this house, museum, and will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the Roger Morris Park, Morris Jumel Mansion, or Jumel Terrace Historic District. However, we recommend that the number of events be reduced if possible, and that they be consolidated in the least noticeable locations of the room.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This application is approved. Thank you.